welcome back to my channel. I'm the Spell Singer and this is my ongoing review of the series of game books known as Fighting Fantasy. And in this review I'm going to give you a quick look at this title with its book number, and then I'll read the blurb to you. We'll talk about the plot, we'll look at the locations, we'll talk about the game mechanics, and look at that adventure sheet. I'll run the artwork through this video and talk about my own likes and dislikes, fun facts, any errors, and a summary and score, and I'll finish with a shout out. But first of all, this is book 44. This is Legend of the Shadow Warriors. It came out in 1991 and it was by Stephen Hand, who did Dead of Night. Remember that review? So Stephen Hand is coming up with book number 2, and Terry Oakes did this awesome front cover here, which is fan favourite, to be honest, from what I've heard. Seems to be a bit of a fan favourite. But of course, Martin McKenna did all that excellent internal artwork for this one. So Martin McKenna and Terry Oakes, what a combination. Right, let me read this blurb to you from my copy so you can see what this one's all about. A strange madness is abroad in Gallantaria. Villagers are being put to the sword by 5 ghostly figures. The Shadow Warriors are mysterious beings from an ancient legend who have somehow returned to life. But are they all that they seem? You are the battle-scarred veteran hired to solve the mystery, but even you have never faced a challenge like the Shadow Warriors, for the whole of the world is threatened by their terrible secret. So that was the blurb. Okay, let's see what's happening in the plot, and then we'll check out where this is all kicking off. So this one, the book is set in the usual fantasy setting of Titan. However, it is set at a different time period to the rest of the series. This is set in a historical period, just after the War of the Four Kingdoms in the Old World, and you take the role of veteran of this war, and you're now living as a mercenary who was called on by the villagers of Karnstein to protect them from these rampaging shadow warriors. And you're drawn into this battle with these shadow warriors and their master, Voivod, the personification of death and decay. So this one is set after the event of Steve Jackson's The Tasks of Tantalon, for those of you that know that book. And you're being a mercenary who's fought on the side of Royal Lendl in the Wars of the Four Kingdoms. You now relish in the peace that is now established throughout. And you start out at this inn in Royal Lendl, looking for some adventure, when you have a run-in with this fella from Karnstein. And he tells you that his town is under threat from these terrible foe, and for 100 gold pieces you are asked to lend a hand, and so you set off with him. And that's the premise. So it's quite a straightforward plot, this one. First you take a bit of a trip around Royal Lendl itself, buy equipment, look at some information, get some clues, and try and gather as much as you can before you set out. And then on leaving the town, you have to deal with this unpaid tax bill. The guy shows up with this great big bill that you've got to pay, and then you've got your first fateful encounter with these shadow warriors shortly afterwards, and you can actually fight one of them. So you roll a die basically to determine which one, because there are a handful of these shadow warriors. But you get into a battle, but your company that you're with, your companions, all get wiped out by these shadow warriors because you're the only one surviving. So if you can survive this kind of big trial, then you're well on your way. You head off for your mission proper, and eventually you reach Karnstein to try and save that town. And that's it. Now, in terms of location for this book, we're in Titan, like I mentioned. And you can see from this map here, you've got Alancia, Kull, and the Old World. So if we zoom in on the Old World, you can just about see Gallantaria. And then if I go even further, you can see from this Leo Hartas map a decent close-up of Gallantaria. Right, let's talk about the game mechanics, and then I'll bring up the adventure sheet. So you're limited to carrying only one weapon in this book, just the one, at any sort of given time. Anyway, this weapon has to be recorded in the weapon box, which I'll show you in a moment. And also, you begin the adventure with no provisions as such, or armour. And the amount of gold pieces you start off with is determined by a 2d6 plus 12. So you get a decent amount of gold to sort of get you on the right path, buy all the good stuff in the city before you leave. Any armour that is acquired must be recorded in the armour box. As with any weapon, only one can obviously be carried or worn at any given time. The mechanics are particularly sound, and in this Fighting Fantasy book, special rules allowing you for adjusters based on your weapons and armour. So if you imagine, you pick up a piece of armour, it'll say this will give you a damage protection of 1 perhaps. You'll take maybe 1 less damage, but you might get a penalty later. And the same goes for the weapons as well. It might give you a +1 in the damage you cause, but weapons don't necessarily last forever. They do get a bit of a pounding after all the use they get. So as realistically you would imagine, they do break eventually. And you begin with a sword, like I mentioned, but other weapons and armour can be purchased or found throughout this book. That's always quite a cool thing, and they can do some good extra damage to villains, and you will need to. There are some tough encounters in this one. And if you lose your weapon completely, you have to fight with a -1 skill until you can replace it. You start without any armour, but as and when you get some, you can take reduced damage, so depending on what the armour is and where it is on your body. There is a downside, like I mentioned, to wearing some armour. It can even impact on your skill tests because of the weight, you see. So if you have to perform a jump or a climb and you're wearing a certain piece of armour, it can hamper your skill roll. This is really well designed mechanic, and kind of implements nicely into a more realistic world, that you're venturing in, where armour is good, but it has a downside, and weapons are strong, but they don't last forever. So it just kind of adds a little bit of realism. There's also a really cool item, goes by the name of Book of Numbers. I'll read this bit to you. It's this image here. This is a book that you get. It's quite an important book that you can pick up, and it'll allow you to sort of get a little clue towards a riddle you'll need to solve later on. It reads, "In your hands is a page of the Astrakan's Numeris, as laid down by Paracelsus, the numerologist. And though born blind, he has mystic sight, which has given him the gift of prophecy and the ability to chart the complex, unexplored realm of numbers. He has combined both gift to the creation of this rare book, which predicts the return of Voivod, provides the numerological knowledge required to defeat him. Filled with horror, you read the tales of Voivod's first existence on Titan, but you are relieved to see that the numerology is easy to understand. Basically, the system instructs you on how to turn words into numbers of mystical significance, and you can turn any word into its numerological equivalent by converting each individual letter into a number using the key below, and then by adding all the numbers is found to create a mystical total." So here you can see that grid there with the numbers and letters, and then it gives you this little example. Royal Lendo is converted as, and you can see obviously the makeup of letters and the numbers that go with them, which obviously represent references later on. So that's quite cool. This book will assist you in the final stages of this adventure, so it's very important to see if you can get your hands on it. And here's the adventure sheet. So usual stats, you've got skill, stamina, and luck. You got that place for the weapons that we talked about, and armour, so they've got their own box along with provisions, any gold pieces, and of course you've got your equipment box. There aren't too many items to be found in this one, but those that there are quite important. And then you've got a notes section at the bottom as well. I did use a lot of that. There are lots of clues and pointers in this game book, and you will want to make note of them. Artwork for this book. So the colour map on the inside is by Leo Hartas, and Terry Oakes, like I say, provided the Hagwort cover, this fella here on the front. He's one of the most sinister in any of the Puffin range in my thoughts. Good use of blue toning, which kind of adds to the foreboding sort of dusk effect of that illustration. Now, of course, Martin McKenna provides the internal illustrations. Every image is brilliant, as you would expect it to be, kind of emphasizing those dark horrors, and the book presents to you in a kind of really kind of Hammer-esque feel to it, with a lot of those landscape images that he's so good at. I love this image here. This is probably my favorite one, actually. This is like a twofold alternative image. It comes up in the streets of Gaunt, and the first one here that you can see, everything seemingly appears normal, and then if I transition it, the second one shows an exact duplicate image, but with the mandrake revealed. So there's this bit where you go into this Gaunt village, everything seems okay, and a little bit of chaos suddenly erupts, and people come running out of their houses, the partners, and screaming, and then their partner shows up, and one will say, no, that's not my wife, or that's not my husband. And it turns out that these mandrakes have taken over. They use them like a parasite, and only with a special item can you reveal them for what they are. So it's very clever use of artwork. I love it when the illustrator gets involved with the author in this way. They kind of work hand in hand, and then you've got this brilliant description from Stephen Hand mixed with Martin McKenna's artwork. So yeah, you get this kind of really cool transition. Not seen that in any other book in this series, so I think that's quite a striking image. Yeah, my fave. Let me read the bit that goes with it for you. So it says here, relieved, the woman leads you further down the alley, and when your eyes get used to the darkness, you can make out the woman is in a sorry state indeed. Her clothes are filthy and tattered, and there is madness in her eyes. She mumbles, they came 7 days ago, they left this morning. You're a stranger, you're strong, they're taking over, you can't kill them. Soon they'll come for me, and for you too, unless you do something. Perhaps you can beat them, the mandrakes taking our places. Her words tumble out in repetitive, almost insane babble, and then she stops. She looks over her shoulder back to the entrance in the alley, where a finely attired young man is standing. He smiles and extends his hand. Welcome, stranger. I am the Burgermeister. I see you have been forced to listen to the ramblings of the town idiot. Fool's been hopelessly insane for years. And look back towards the wretched woman, seeing a doubt growing in her eyes. She gasps. A mirror. Do you have a mirror? And of course, if you have a mirror, you go to 362, and that's when you get this image. Look at the reflection, she says. Corin may be scared, but she's not stupid. You angle the mirror so that the Burgermeister is reflected in it. Nothing could have prepared you for such a shock as this. There is, in the silver pane, stands the Burgermeister, exposed as a vegetable-like humanoid. You use the mirror to look at yourself and at Corin, and both are normal. But the Burgermeister, you try looking at him again in the mirror, and the result is the same. He's a mandrake, spits the woman. So yeah, a really nice use of artwork there, mixed in with the narrative. Right. So the likes and dislikes for this one. So I love this kind of gothic, kind of Celtic tone, which is both immersive and rich. Got lots of encounters, all these bizarre and thrilling locals. They got like Nightmare Circus you can get involved with. They got the animated scarecrows. You got all these vampires running around. You got those pumpkin-headed foes, and the interior illustrations by Martin McKenna perfectly kind of capture that dark, creepy, like I say, Hammer horror-esque aesthetic. And instead of just defeating the primary villain in a standard kind of boss fight, they do something clever. The story kind of challenges you to forgive the villain, forgive Voivod for this ancient wrong that was committed. So I like that about this book. It's a little bit different. It kind of breaks away from that standard fighting fantasy, fight to the death kind of approach. The book also offers lots of multiple paths to victory, lots of unique encounters, kind of giving it a strong replay value. And however, like many fighting fantasy books and titles, it can be ruthlessly tough. This is not an easy book to finish. And after You suffer a few instant deaths, lots of traps. You might find even a couple of endless loops and maybe forced to start again. The book kind of suffers from a few minor continuity bugs in the text, such as like a slight discrepancy between directions in the story and those provided in the maps. But otherwise, it's perfectly good. Right, fun facts for this book. Now, there is an interview with Stephen Hand, which I'm going to read out. It says here, after much hard work, Dead of Night was finished. Jim and I were pleased to be immediately invited to write another book. Jim decided not to write another, so I worked on Legend of the Shadow Warriors alone. It was a blast. Now I had no reason other than my own failings to go away over the top. I tried to create a world that as a kid I would love to have visited, a total hammer horror reality with the real history and personality. I tried to create a quest that no one had done before, and I tried to take up some serious issues. At the end of the book, you don't kill the bad guy, you forgive him and help him. This to me seemed a stronger and more courageous ending than the usual easy death routine. Who murders the murderers? I also started to build up characters and themes that I wanted to develop over time. And of course, he would come back and write Moonrunner. And there are a few links to this book and Dead of Night, I believe, in that book. So, cool little crossover. So yeah, some of the themes and storylines, such as that kind of Frankenstein-like Dr. Kauderwelz and the parasitic mandrakes, they are continued in that later book, Moonrunner, which we'll get to eventually. It's kind of like a follow-up almost to Legend of the Shadow Warriors. Stephen Hand has written that he envisioned a third book actually as well called Blood of the Mandrakes, which would tie together and conclude several outstanding plots from his earlier books. That I think, although the trilogy idea was there, it was never completed due to obviously the Fighting Fantasy series having the plug pulled back in 1995, I think it was. So that's a shame. We could have had another book by the great Stephen Hand. Now also, the earlier Gold Dragon edition for this book has a colour map on the inside cover, whereas the later one, like mine, the later Dragon version has a black and white one printed on that title page instead, which is a bit of a shame actually. But yeah. Right, a couple of errors just to mention. Reference 17 lists 9 enemies, when at least 3 of them must have perished before you can get to that battle on reference 17. So yeah. This book is set 5 years after the War of the Four Kingdoms. Now this war ended, according to the lore, in 177 or 178 AC. Now the archaeologist Gignol, he claims to be from the city of Shalabrad. But the city was only called this after Shannala, the reformer, came to the throne in the middle of the 3rd century, so just a slight continuity discrepancy there. And also, in the fight against Eartha, one of the encounters, it's possible using a vial of metal rot to destroy her iron band. But later on, after Eartha is defeated, you can find it again, pick it up and take it away with you, even if you previously destroyed it with this metal rot. Okay, let's do a summary and a score for Legend of the Shadow Warriors. Now, with his first Fighting Fantasy effort, Stephen Hand, he gave us something really special in that Dead of Night book. A kind of dark gothic horror story which hadn't really been touched on in the same kind of way. We'd had vampires and House of Hell, of course. This was something different. This had a lot of warped ideas that made for a really satisfying kind of playing and reading experience. And now, with his second effort, Hand proved that it wasn't just a one-off. With Legend of the Shadow Warriors, he kind of proved that he was a serious gamebook writer. This book is uniquely brilliant, with the sheer variety and quality of material on offer and the manner in which it's presented. Firstly, neither of the main routes is the optimum path. You can really go either way, you still have a chance of winning. And within the 2 main routes that you're offered, there are several subpaths to add more replayability and lots more variety. So it's always a good thing. Also, there are secondary plots that can sort of either help or hinder your progress, including the tax collector, Queensbury Woad, who's after you for this unpaid tax debt in Royal Lendal. And there's also tangling with Dr. Caudervelts and her experiments. And you've got the body-snatching mandrakes, those pumpkin-headed hagworts that are tormenting the town of Hustings. And you've got that running with some veterans from the opposing army and joining a circus of dreams as well. It's kind of Doctor Who vibe to it, early Doctor Who. I really love that. There's so much variety and so much colour in this book. Your character is not just like a one-dimensional hero type, rather he's a purposeful and logical character with a strong background, which places you in the situation that you are in, also allows for some sort of consequence, such as the encounter with someone that you fought with back in the war. And of course you've got that tax evasion business as well. So it kind of hints back to a history that you had before the war. This really feels like a full experience of characterization, which is quite rare in these books sometimes. And also, it's a tough adventure. You know, Shadow Warriors are very strong to fight, and they all have these special instructions as well. Let me read some to you. Reference 28 gives you a little lowdown about some of the things they can do. So it says here, realizing that you are no match for the might of all 5 warriors combined, you run back to the north. Your lungs burn as you try to put some distance between yourself and the shrieking phantoms. Fortunately, you come at last to a narrowing of the path which forces the warriors to ride in single file. But one of them has sped ahead of the others in a bid to delay you. You must fight and destroy it before the rest catch up. You roll a die, and if you get a 6, you roll again. But let me just take the first one, for example, on reference 8, and it just says, the Shadow Warrior you face carries no weapon. It is a master of martial arts. Its deadly rotted hands move with blurring speed. Each attack round, the warrior has 2 attacks. Treat this combat as if you are fighting 2 opponents with identical ratings at the same time. So they're really strong, and they don't always stay dead either. So I won't go into that in case you've not read how that happens or what to do to keep them dead. But yeah, so you've got all them to contend with. Okay, so the final showdown with the main baddie, Voivod. It cannot be won without a special item, the Spear of Doom. And it involves having to give him life rather than death, which is quite a cool concept. And to defeat him, you've got to roll less than whatever the spear's current life force is at that point, because of course you can use it previously on other creatures to get instant kills. But you don't really want to do that because you kind of need it at full strength for the final battle. And this final act is very interesting. It's the only part of the book really that involves cheat proofing with all these different maths puzzles. Yeah, using this map of Karnstein, the surroundings and any info that you kind of gathered, you've got to work out where Voivod is and then render the location's name into their corresponding hidden sections using that numerical code that we looked at earlier, which is this image here. So that's a really cool little mechanic just to sort of stop you cheating. I like that. You know, the hidden section trick has been sort of reserved for the very ending, you know, rather than sort of an ongoing factor throughout the book. They save it right for the end. And the boss is quite a worthy opponent. If Voivod wounds you in a regular combat, he gains 2 stamina for every 2 that you lose. So, yeah, once you give him life by using the Spear of Doom, he turns back into a good guy. And the ending is probably one of the biggest twists since Creature of Havoc. And really does come as a surprise. There's a proper sting in the tail. The shadow, I'll tell you what it is, so spoiler alert if you want to skip ahead. But the Shadow Warriors that you have not yet destroyed, they have to be killed before you can deal with Voivod himself. Otherwise you've got to fight them all over again before you fight Voivod, which is a bit punishing, to say the least. Now, my favourite invention are these mandrakes. They cause widespread trouble throughout the land, but of course the primary baddies are the Shadow Warriors. But you know, the mandrakes are right up there. They're really interesting. In my opinion, they're more interesting than the Shadow Warriors. But those are the main sort of villains. There's so much going on in this adventure. There's lots of options, directions to take, places to explore, nasty monsters, invasions to stop. And on reaching Karnstein, your goal area, goal city, you discover that time is also of the essence in stopping Voivod's plan, meaning you need to be quite selective about what you get involved in. So all these little stop-offs and subplots, they're interesting, but they could be your undoing. You might get to Karnstein too late. If you do arrive especially quickly, this can work in even more to your advantage because, by arriving early, that path is not easy to achieve, but you can get a one-up on Voivod. Okay, so yeah, Legend of the Shadow Warriors is an exceptionally good game book. It's a bit of a fan favourite, lots of exciting gameplay, beautifully put together, lots of ample replayability. It's got high lastability. And most gamebook writers would sort of avoid throwing so much A-grade material just at this one book, but Steve Hand really kind of goes for it with this offering. Shadow Warriors are one of Fighting Fantasy's most sort of lethal monsters, and you really dread your run-ins with them. And perhaps they are the most memorable ones to me, right up there with a lot of Steve Jackson's famous characters and creations. So, if you sum all that up, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. It is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, 7 out of 10 for Legend of the Shadow Warriors. Okay, let's do a shout out. So I've mentioned him before. His name's Håkon Soreid. Yeah, I'll put his link in the description. But he's still ploughing through all these Fighting Fantasy game books. He has the whole lot. He's working his way through them. And he's actually reading the book, so you can actually do it along here with him, as opposed to reading the PDFs that are available. So it's quite nice. He has all the physical books. He goes through them. He gives them his thoughts. He does a little conclusion, finds the optimum path. He's a really good fella to sort of follow. So yeah, check his channel out. It's a good one. So that's my review for Legend of the Shadow Warriors. Next book is going to be 45 Spectral Stalkers, which is an absolute classic. But let me know your thoughts on this one. Put some comments in there. Tell me what you liked about this one. If you've read it, or if you think you might read it based on this review, maybe share the channel out. But look after yourselves, and I'll catch you in the next review.